You need to go to jquery.com and click on the download link. I hope you already downloaded. You can choose 1.x or 2.x depending on the target where you want to add a support. If you are only addressing the latest browsers, and of course we are going to address only mobile browsers, so most of the mobile browsers are latest. We can safely download jQuery 2.x and download the compressed and production jQuery, something like that. So clicking on it will download the specific library, which is very small. If you notice, the size is almost 84 KB. It's pretty small, and it's a minified file. For example, if you try to open it, let me copy here. I'll copy it to our project folder. It's where I am updating. If I try to open this file, I won't get substantial information. If you notice, all looks like a quite special characters, or maybe uh, looks like quite compressed without any space. It means JavaScript really don't need or don't recognize the spacing between your object. Not only JavaScript, almost all the programming languages. We give spacing, indent, alignment only for our readable purpose. If you really do not want them, you can very well strip out the space wherever it is not necessary. Of course, those codes will work. So it is a stripped out version which doesn't contain any space between the variables or maybe the function declaration. So the size of the file could be reduced, and also it is going to be used for our library purpose. So we don't need to modify anything, in fact. So let it be, and we don't even need to open it. But we'll be using certain method which is defined inside. If you want to see the source code, if you really want to see what exactly been written, you can use the uncompressed version developed in jQuery, which will have all the spacing and will have all the functions which will be in the readable format. The same one, it is a minified format, that is a source format, we often say. And whatever you want to get the entire source code on how things being developed, if you want to participate on the development, of course you can do it. It is open source community, and there is a code sharing version. I think it is hosted in GitHub nowadays, and there are various ways to install that also if you are working on the development of the specific jQuery, so which we are not going to do, of course, anyway. Okay, so once you download, you bring it to your source folder where you are going to use the jQuery. I just copied it into a root folder where my file is located. Maybe I'll go ahead and create a new HTML file instead of modifying one. So something JQ or something jQuery based or something. I want to keep it in a separate file so that we could compare whatever changes we did once we adapt jQuery instead of conventional JavaScript in place. I hope you understood the logic. This design or the way I accomplish the task is based on the type, data type, students array, which is of type JavaScript array. So any changes happen to this array, I want to have the UI updated accordingly. So based on the contents of the students array, the UI is built every time. In that, if you notice the init method, it's not only initialized, and of course it is called multiple time whenever a new content added or edited, and of course deleted. And this particular block makes sure the specific row is added where we need it, and not only it adds, of course, before adding it we also make sure it is updated to what do you call the array as well. And this is for delete, and of course it also updates or recreate the table. Positive number for a selected index mean it is edit any number which is containing negative, which tells that the particular click event of this button on register, it is for insert. So we always check if there is any positive number. So this is a negative number, mean it will insert a new item. If it is a positive number, naturally that index would be treated as for editing. So this is what we concluded, and of course this is what we did in the previous exercise to have, or a dynamic table view to be created based on the user form, whatever he enters. As we extend the code, and maybe I will change from a next topic onwards. I'll be creating a new project, maybe a shopping list. I want to bring a couple of more components instead of just input fields. I want to bring radio buttons. I want to bring the checkboxes. Let's see some different in text field or input field, so that our application would look more, you know comprehensive, or maybe uh, could be put into use for a real application development purpose. So we are going to extend a little bit as it get as our requirement grows. So the very first part, I want to separate the logics. As we did in CSS, we created a separate file for CSS and we simply gave a link here. Of course, JavaScript part also could be made in that way. So in that case, if you really want to have this JavaScript entirely written and which get merged in your HTML file itself, you can go ahead and create a separate JavaScript file by right-clicking on your root folder and JavaScript file. So any name, I just gave a my.js or something like that. Okay, so now you can move your entire JavaScript block which you wrote in the previous exam. I'm just updating that only as of now. Except the script block, take every code within the JavaScript cut, paste. So I moved the entire JavaScript part in a separate file which is called myjs.js. Now I can simply give a link instead of script, src source, give the link of your JavaScript. Of course, you are done with that. So this will also work. This will help us to keep the code logic separated, so not to confuse the entire page. But performance-wise, it is not something kind of beneficial. Only part the code was removed to some extent, but any code which is getting merged in the HTML page only. So, but it's only for our code organizing technique, or maybe I can keep the logic separate. So if you want to have a separate file, yes, you can go ahead and do it. And by defining script src, under src, make sure you give some file .js. Previously, I'm talking on the HTML 4.x time. I need to give a type stating that text JavaScript or something like that, but it is not mandatory now. Same like previous exercise, we gave a rel attribute with the style sheet definition or something like the values what we gave. Similarly, maybe previous browser demanded the external file should have a declaration type text JavaScript, but right now it is not required. It is not even recommended as in HTML5 draft. Okay, so this is for previous example, but anyway, we are going to migrate to JavaScript jQuery based. Okay, few things I need to do. This is my page. Of course, I'm going to keep my CSS as it is. I'm not going to change anything. Oh, sorry, I need to link it. Give the open tag. HTML is not quite strict. If you sometime forget the tag which you don't close it, also it will work, but link tag could be kept open if required, or you can close it as you want. This time I'm not going to include the JavaScript which I externally connected. This time I'm going to link jQuery jQuery is a library. Being a library, the methods defined in this file, I can have a free access in my code now, because on the top I linked the jQuery file. So most of the methods defined or functions defined in that file can be accessed, and this is how JavaScript link also work. If you have a multiple script block, so any variable defined in the previous script block can be accessible by the subsequent script block, which is called one by one. So an object can be penetrated within the different file segment because it is all part of a single document. In this case, the document name is registration jq.html. Okay, time being I'll keep another script block. Later I'll move it to a separate file. And this is where I'm going to write jQuery based one. I'm going to need the same variables. The array to start with is empty. Index or whatever, that will be the name. As I keep the same. I would prefer copying the UI because I'm not going to change anything on the UI side because the CSS is the same. So I'm going to bring all the data from here so that the UI could be kept. This onload stuff I'll come back later, whether it is needed or not we'll decide. Before that I want to verify whether the look and feel is there. Is it there? But we do not have a previous JavaScript code, it is a different file. If you right click on view page source, you can see the source code. I hope I don't need to tell that because it's what we have been doing to verify what is the HTML code. Sometimes we get suspicion. But this code only display the content of your document which is generated when the first time when document is loaded. Any dynamic addition won't be visible here. But if you really want to see what is that content dynamically got added, of course we have an inspect element to see the console, that we will see it a little later. So the first function I wrote was init. So the very first line I wanted to make sure my table row is cleared. That's what I did. If you want to see that particular part, what I did, document get element by ID, the ID of a table row, and made sure the inner HTML made empty to start with. The same I can write in jQuery. jQuery block can be easily identified because it will always start with a dollar symbol. Anything I'm going to write, if you notice dollar, mean it is something to do with the jQuery because I am calling a jQuery library. If you see a dollar symbol, you have to make sure it is a jQuery specific. If this dollar to be recognized, make sure the jQuery has been linked on the top. Otherwise, this dollar would be treated as undefined or whatever that symbol or anything else as far as JavaScript. Okay. So before I'll also write what is the replication I'm trying to do. So this is what I'm trying to write in jQuery. Document get element by ID inner HTML set to blank, or maybe I'm trying to set it empty. The same can be written. ID selector is hash because table row is nothing but an ID of a DOM. Define. Make sure within quotation, give table rows and make it empty. This line is equivalent to the previous one which I just commented. I don't need to go through and search through the document. jQuery has the moment jQuery gets loaded, it has already scanned the document. It knows the whatever variables or whatever IDs exist. And instead of document get element by ID and defining the ID within quotation and put dot inner HTML, make it equal to empty. that same thing has been done in this way. So the dollar tells it is a jQuery method or jQuery function, and within quotation hash table rows tell hash mean I'm trying to access the ID property of a DOM. So because it is ID, and table rows dot empty will make sure the particular inner HTML set clear. So much clean or something in this way. Okay. So we've been using local storage, and I would like to use the same data. So I'm going to keep the most of the conventions same so that this data could be shared between them. So local storage, students record. I hope it's right. Yeah, students record. If local storage exists with the student records, so the students array gets JSON class. Okay, so we have a student array now, and I need to iterate it over. Let's see some other example of for loop. The basic for loop which we often do is this for loop having a variable called I. It's quite convention. It's most of the programming language contains this kind of for loop where a number needed uh, initialized with a 0, and it is going to be iterated over the length of your student array, and this is what we do. The post increment, every iteration will have the I value incremented and it iterate through the uh, content of an array. So I was getting the previous example, uh, the values of the particular student array by iterating and casting the value, the index, and the object name. So this is how I was getting the value of a first name from the given array. This was one example of using a for loop. It's quite effective and has been widely used. But modern developers find this for loop is not, this kind of for loop is not performance driven. For obvious reason, this for loop read the array element twice for every occurrences. Why? I mean, when you try to find the length of the student array, it has to scan through the entire student array, then only it can find the student array length. So that itself, one level of scanning already happened. And second subsequent array, again it is reading the same array again and again. So the twice reading the array may not be a performance driven for a micro devices. Not now, I'm just talking about in exceptional cases. So later there were various change of for loops came, and of course we have various options to get the for loops. If you notice, some people won't prefer to see a for loop with the index item repeated. Maybe you will encounter when you start working in a real project where your manager would feel why you use this kind of for loop, why don't you use of iteration or something else. So the reason behind is this for loop or this kind of for loop uh, typically scanning the array twice. Mean for to find the length of the array, it has to scan the entire array, and of course to iterate each element, it has to scan one more time. The replacement could be JavaScript replacement, not the. I can write var I in students array. Mean that find the index in each occurrence of your student array. So I can write simply in this way instead of finding the length of an array. So that is a replacement of this array. So of course we need to verify whether that it is fetching the data or not. I want to make sure it works. I don't know whether it is working. The major reason is the init is hanging on the wall. I removed it. That also I want to replace. body onload, I may want to find some other way to get an access. Of course, it is retrieving the values because I use the same local storage name, which is part of my same project. Because registration and registration JQ both exists comes from the same project. So any variable created by the other HTML file can be accessed by this file as well. So instead of that for loop, I would recommend you use this for loop hereafter. Should be very careful while using the for loop. This for loop not only iterates through an array, it can also have a capability to iterate through an object as well. It means the result of this for loop, while it iterate over it, in each occurrence it brings an a JavaScript object. For example, I'll just take the stobj something student object, each occurrence students array. So each occurrence of a student array is going to be an object. That also can be put inside a for loop. If you do not know what is the keys, because if I know the key, I can directly put the value. Chances are they sometimes you don't know what how many keys are exist and what are all the values associated. So same key in object. This also the key I because I know it is going to retrieve the key because I'm going to iterate over a JavaScript object, not in array. Remember, if you are iterate through an array, you will get an index of the particular array. If you iterate over a JavaScript object, you will get a key of a particular JavaScript object. So I'm going to put the console log value for key is this also I can do. I already told you dot notation also will work or box notation also will work. Since it is an object type, the dot notation will confuse the object, so I put it inside the box. Let me run this. If you notice, nowhere I extract the key name, so it finds the value for a key first name is Ram, the value for a key last name is Charan or something like that. Just iterated over all the elements of your JavaScript object. So I have two for loops in this case. One for loop iterates over a JavaScript array, which fetches the JavaScript object residing inside a JavaScript array, and each JavaScript object iterated to another for loop, which fetches the key and value, which separates the key and value, and of course that could be outputted as well. For a professional developers, I would recommend try to limit the use of the index-based for loop. It's not something you should not use at all. If you feel you want for a quick output or maybe want to write, you can simply use it. But I would like to say this is there is another option also exists. Okay, so this is what we saw in for loop. So let it be. In fact, I need to create the UI. For your better clarity, I'll comment the whole init block. Okay. So I just kept it for your reference, just commented the block. Now I need to create a UI. There is no insert row, remove row kind of thing in jQuery. In fact, if you really want to use the insert row, nobody uses insert row, remove row nowadays. So because when you have access to a DOM where you can directly write HTML code, we don't prefer to use that. But instead, I'm trying to use one of a property called jQuery property called append. So So appending a DOM, existing DOM can be appended with additional values. So that I'm going to use. So this DOM has been set empty, and just before the what do you call your JavaScript for loop to start, I'm going to make, okay, not probably this way, because there's going to be inside the for loop, because I'm going to add one more for loop inside. I'm going to use append, going to add table row tr element. Remember last time how to add a table row with inside, how to add a cell programmatically or HTML wise we saw. So all you need to, if you really want to get a clarification, this is where I created HTML tables. You notice each set, the first root node is tr, and subsequent cells are added, and finally tr get closed. And that part I'm going to replicate in in JavaScript now. Now I added a table row. Now I'm going to use one more for loop, which I'm going to iterate to get back my array elements. So key in, I can directly give that instead of wasting one object, because where I is also an object. So every occurrence of the student array, there is going to be an object. That object is going to contain a key. Append a td element, table data or column data according to you. Concatenation students array multi-dimensional one, which is the same equivalent. Previously what I did, I put the value to a JavaScript object and then I call the key. But if you do not want to waste that particular object called st object, you can directly do this way. So the first key will be first name. Your table element got added. So the first one td, first name will come, and this block will repeat, keep adding individual cells programmatically. When this particular for loop is over, make sure you finish the table row. Append. So this will produce the required table view. Let me see how it looks like. I think action is missing, button I missed it. But anyway, it brought the result. That's the problem here. So just after iterating over the object, because the button one we manually added, so I need to make sure that is also added at the end. I need to come out of this for loop, because this for loop will iterate over an object. When the object is completely read, mean first name, last name, roll number, subject is read, I need to add the action, which is the fourth one. So in the previous case, how did I add it? Of course, I added the HTML code only directly in my JS somewhere I wrote. Yeah, this is what I added. In this case, I'm going to put that code here. The index is nothing but I in this case. So let me check. Now I got back the same result. So the prepare table cell or something, some method I wrote, I didn't write this time. I made sure only init itself takes the entire load, because init I would be calling any number of time to recreate my UI. So this block entirely uses jQuery. jQuery identification is quite easy. It will have a dollar prefix and the DOM ID, which is equivalent to document get element by ID with the quotation the DOM ID. Instead of that, I need to simply give a hash and the DOM ID name. In the very first stage, I make it empty. The second stage, I get back the students array from the local storage and I iterate it over a for loop. In the very first instance of a for loop will iterate over the array, so it will get me an index of an array. From the index, I will be getting an object of a students array. In that object, there is going to be keys, multiple keys. So I'm going to put one more for loop to get the values of the specific keys, and I get it. In fact, I'm using DOM append to add a table row freshly from the very beginning of each iteration of an array. Once the object is initialized, an object is retrieved from that particular instance of an array, I made sure the same append is used with a td table cell, and of course at the end I also make sure adding the button, and finally I finish the row. So this will repeat as long as your entire array is iterated over. So if you notice what is the HTML it has created, inspect elements, if we go to the source code right bar, expand selection, table, t body, if you notice it has nicely created the table rows and of course the respective values. I think something is wrong here. Oh, button is there. Okay, fine, nothing. So specific elements being added according to our requirement and everything is there as required. So it's been created. Okay, rows and columns added. Okay. And document, let me see one more function. I tried to get rid of this body onload method, so there should be a way. I'm just trying. I'll let you know what I'm trying, but let me see if that works. Works, I think. Okay. Instead of writing body onload and defining the value to init or whatever, because this is the first method to be loaded when your document is ready. Document is ready. So the jQuery equivalent already has one of a helper method. There is a option to check whether the document is ready. So that method could be written in such a way, document on. I'll let you know how to write this function. Dollar document mean your current document, your HTML file. Dot, there is an option. It is one of observable or bindable method. This kind of on or something. It means it is listening to an event. For example, in this case, there are a lot of events are there, especially the event which I'm going to look for is called ready, even though it is defined as a string, but it is being treated as an event. So when a document is ready, it will call a function. So I can write the function. A generic function could be written with no name, mean when document is ready, this particular function would be called. So this way also I can write, or this way also I can call, because init is already a function. If you have a name, you can give a name, otherwise just write the block of the function without the name. This will also work. This particular bindable method or observable method checks whether the document is ready. When the document is ready, it will call a function, a kind of callback function, and then initialize your DOMs or your methods. In this case, init should be called as soon as your page is ready. So if you do not want to use body on load, you can very well use this method, the alternate methods, to get back a call from this. I am keeping it as a quite generic because I may be calling multiple functions when the document is ready. So that's the reason I kept it this way instead of directly declaring an init. Sometime I may need to call a couple of functions together. So I'm going to write this way for this will also work. The placement of document ready is very important, but anyway, so far we are writing the script blocks on the top, so we will see that if there any impact it is going to create as I move the content. Okay, after that it's quite same throughout. Anyway, we'll complete that part also. So let me take a code from the other part. Okay. Delete table row, fine, because no problem, because in it we are going to do the same, so no problem, delete is fine. And this clear press, I don't want to use this way at all anywhere, so I'm going to replace them with the jQuery specific hash. uh, the jQuery equivalent of value is val, and should be set to empty. This is inner HTML. Okay, inner HTML equivalent is HTML. It looks like a method, so as an argument I specify, I need to do in this way. So the all equivalent is written. We totally migrated to a jQuery for clearing the content. Okay, I've saved it. Let me see whether it works. Clear alone I have done. Okay, it works. So the entire part I migrated to a jQuery. Okay, for edit, which is adding the value to a content. So in this case, guys are getting sleepy. It's nice AC, huh? Heavy food in afternoon. Am I right? Hmm? Anyway, it's what I'm doing is quite simple. So Hopefully, I will take your time after some time. Android won't make you sleep, of course. There are plenty, bunch of things are coming. But anyway, roll number, subject. So this part right now migrated again. So this part also I'll comment for your reference. So whole bunch now migrated to jQuery. I think the clear pressed I can call whenever init is called instead of manually calling. Clear press. Pressed. One method is missing, right? Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Where is the code logic? So this function is primarily very important that actually either adds or update content. So I need to migrate this part also to jQuery. Most of the time this will won't work, it won't work for you, because most of the mistake I've noticed the developer does is they sometimes they will forget the dollar. Be careful while you use jQuery. Dollar or sometimes hash, so they will forget and will be wondering why this thing is not working. Okay, so this part also migrated to jQuery. It's clear press, I'll put it in the init itself. This part I can remove it because it's not relevant now. So other part I kept it commented for your reference, so which is the equivalent of jQuery part. So the entire code is right now migrated to jQuery. Even though this part is slightly redundant, but it gives a complete flexibility to modify the DOM directly, and this produces an effective table. I've used two different for loops, one for loop to iterate an array, another for loop to iterate an object. So get used to it. Let me check. Things should work as expected. It works. Deletes. Everything is perfect. So the point here is this particular code is entirely, totally migrated to a jQuery one. And we also read the DOM status. When the DOM is ready, it will initialize the page or initialize the function. So this also I migrated to a document.on ready, and I call a generic function. A JavaScript function could be written in various ways. For example, This way also I can create a function, assigning the function to a variable, treat it as an object and call that object. So you may be wondering why, okay, this guy will read a semicolon. Okay, a function and a function itself casted to another variable. The equivalent of the same is, for that I need to comment again. Okay. This is also same. So the previous way, this way also I can write a function. This way also I can write a function. I can call the function as well. These are all the ways of creating a JavaScript function. Whatever way is suitable for you, you can follow it, and there is no specific what do you say, the recommendation you should use this format. It's up to you. It's up to the individual user preference, but the JavaScript function can be called in this way as well. So for your reference, I'm keeping them. The document ready, I purposefully kept it as a generic function because sometimes I may need to call multiple functions when the document is ready. So for that purpose, I kept it as a function block in this way. So this particular document, there is a bindable option where when a document is ready, automatically jQuery will call the function and make sure your function is initialized. And I don't even need to write anything on the HTML side. jQuery keep monitoring the entire DOM, whatever changes happen, it will observe and keep your code working as expected. So it's up to you the way you choose. But for a migration, for example, the next subsequent exercises we are going to introduce jQuery mobile, which is again a subset of this jQuery. Hereafter, I will be continuing the jQuery recommended format only because our requirement is something to do with the jQuery mobile as well. So I may be limiting the conventional or direct access to a JavaScript. Instead, I'm going to use a jQuery formatted one. So there will be more dollars and hash and all the symbols will be continuing hereafter. So the previous exercise right now completely migrated to jQuery formatted one. And if you wish this script block also to be defined as a separate method, separate file, of course you can go ahead and call it, and of course you can have them separated. So that's it. I'm going to put the source code to a developer site, and of course you can take a break.